Welcome to our second episode of It's a Band Thing, the official podcast of the Association of Concert Bands. And I am going to be your Ebenezer Scrooge this evening. This is our second episode, but it's also a special Christmas episode. And we thought it would be very fun to have not only my co-host on the episode this month, but also the presidents of Christmas past, present, and future of the ACB. We have the president elect, the ghost of Christmas future in this case, Beth Steele. We have the president, immediate past president, Susan Sands. And then, of course, we have my co host for the podcast and current president of the Association of Concert Bands, Gail Brechting. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on the podcast tonight.
It's so good to be here.
Thank
Uh,
you.
w- well, I wanted to use this as an opportunity to really explore what the Association of Concert Bands is, and for anyone that's ever done any committee work, we all know that there's, you know, how did you get involved in an association or committee? Well, it's usually because I was dragged onto it in some way, but to stay on it long enough to rise to the ranks of president must mean that you have some love and a real passion and um, it is work that you feel is very important to you. So I want to kind of explore that with everyone this evening. But before we do that, Gail, we're going to be at Midwest Clinic very soon, and I think all of us
Yes.
here are going to be there.
Yes, we are. It's going to be very exciting. We have a brand new booth. It was just created and designed and has been shipped to my home, and we're going to be setting it up, and that's going to be fun. So if you are coming to Midwest, please make sure you stop to booth 1690 was it 1693, I think. And it's our booth. Come and see us. It's going to be fun. We'd love to have you come by, and good to see everybody if you're at Midwest.
It looks really slick. It looks
Yeah.
really slick, and I believe you're putting a test run together
Yeah.
of building it now
Yes.
next week. Is that right?
Yes. In fact, our marketing director, Mary Kate, is coming over to my house on Monday, and we are going to move all my furniture out of the living room, and we're going to give it a try, measure it out so it's the size of the actual spot. And I put one piece together, the easiest piece I put together, and it took me, I timed myself, and taking it out and putting it back in, it took me 12 minutes for the easy piece. So we'll see what everything else goes because we've got, I think, 4 or 5 other pieces besides that. So,
So,
yeah.
so who usually does all the hard graft of the of putting the association's uh, boot together each year? Susan, has that been you in the past?
No, actually, there's been a core of four people, the Canines, Jim and Donna, and Mike and Nada Montgomery have just taken it and been working with it for years and really dedicated. Yeah.
It's hard work. I mean, I was recently at the World Travel Market in London. It's a big convention for tourism, and but wow, some of those booths, they're like buildings. So it's hard work, and it takes you arriving in a day beforehand. Beth, you have been a member of the Association of Concert Bands for quite some time now, and you have a career in the military and have you been attending conventions like this in other capacities as well as the association?
Oh yeah, so I attended Midwest first when I was at Northwestern, who's in Chicago, and so I worked the Northwestern booth with John Painter, who is one of the founders of Midwest, actually. Um, so so I went many years before I was in the Army. I also went, of course, to Midwest most years when we were in the Army. So there's usually a military group playing there at Midwest, and so the DC bands, and so yeah, many years at Midwest. It feels like yeah, I think there was I think I went 20 years straight to Midwest.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Well, did you ever have to do the hard graft when you were in the army? Did you have to do the setup yourself?
well, I was technically on the committee, on the staff, and so
Right.
I did go and help with the setup and the teardown too. But we had a dedicated group of non-commissioned officers that were responsible for that. So I tried mostly not to get in their way.
Right.
That's what we
As a
need, are some non-commissioned officers in ACB to do this.
having been a non-commissioned officer for a long time, you did the right thing, Beth. Stay out of the way. I've had to bring my boot all the way from Ireland over the last number of
Oh yeah.
years, so that's some amount of work to try and do that every year. But this year it's all been done for us, which is fantastic. But I want to get started with talking a little bit about the association and what it means to each one of you. Gail, do you want to talk a little bit about this and maybe then chat to Susan and Beth about
Sure,
their feelings on it? And
sure,
how did
sure.
you get involved in the association? What is it that called to you
Right,
about it?
right. Well, I was in a band a long time ago that apparently was a member, and I just didn't even know. I was just a playing member of the band, so I had kind of heard of it, a little pamphlet or something. But my band was performing here in Michigan at a festival, and one of our clinicians happened to be Alan Beck, Commander Alan Beck, and he walked up to me and he said two things. He said, "Have you ever heard of ACB? And have you ever heard of the Sudler Silver Scroll Award?" And I hadn't heard of really either of them. So then I had him come to my band to guest conduct the next season, and by Sunday, I was a member of ACB because he was very influential in pushing us into that. He at the time, I believe, was just becoming the past president, and Gerald Gilbo was coming in as president. So I went out to a convention, and when you believe in something as much as I believe in community music, you want to be involved with an association that also believes in that in some fashion. So I checked out a convention. It was out in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and decided, yes, I really wanted to get involved. That's how I got involved. So, Susan, what about you? How did you get involved?
Yeah, there was a convention in Williamsport, which is not far from me and actually very close to where I grew up. So I decided to check it out also and went to the convention and said, wow, I really want to know more about this because I've been very passionate about community music. I just feel very strongly that it does so much for people's lives. And not just the people who play, but also for the people who come, our regular people. I had one audience member bake me cookies that they sent to me for Thanksgiving,
Aw.
just recently. So, and all those kinds of things that just come together that you just feel so strongly about how it affects people's lives and what the importance is. So when I went to Williamsport, it was like a place to connect with other people who had more ideas, and it was opening up to a bigger world of bands than just my particular band, where I was focused on my repertoire and how I was going to grow it all by myself. But, seeing that there's all these other things going on was just amazing. And some of them were better, some of them were worse, some of them were just different. Every band is like every person, there's the uniqueness about it. And there's something to be gained from all those unique qualities.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and so I became just passionate that the association and getting bands together was the way for growth. And our band actually started a community band festival to promote bands in our area. And I think it kind of raised the level that we got to play the great literature for each other that sometimes you can't play for audiences because they go, I don't get that piece.
Right,
But,
right.
with when you're playing for other band groupies, you could do it. So it kind of raised the level and brought in better musicians into our groups as well. So
That's wonderful.
yeah, you can tell I'm really into it.
Sure. I want to
Yeah.
ask you a quick question about how you then got asked to run for the board, to get involved at the board level.
Yeah, I think what happened was, so after I went to Williamsport, I was determined that our group would perform at one of these ACB
Hmm.
conventions the next time it was close enough to home that we could go. And so we performed in Corning. We applied, we were accepted. We even got the good seat in Corning. And I was a total unknown. Our band was a total unknown because, well, anybody that knows me knows I'm exceedingly shy and quiet and fly under the radar. So anyway, that always doesn't work. But Anyway, we performed, and I think it went well. We used that performance and submitted it to the Sousa Foundation, and were granted the Sudler Silver Scroll for
Right.
excellence for the work we've been doing. So somebody else thought it was good too,
Yeah,
is my
absolutely.
thought. And so that's where my band members then became addicted to it. And the next thing, we went to another convention, and before you knew it, we were hosting a convention in Pittsburgh. So
Right. Right. And so you
yeah,
got involved
yeah. So
that
it's
way, but then
contagious.
someone must have asked you to run for the board.
Yeah, they did. And I thought it was kind of silly, actually. I was like, why would they do that? And, it's like, oh, just give it a try. It's like, okay, but, what do I know? I'm just, a band director in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But I did. And then I thought, well, I'm not going to run again. And Tommy Gilbert said, "No, no, this is when you're starting to get up the speed. This is good. You need to keep going," and
Right.
convinced me to do that. So I did it again, and then Jerry was looking for people to run for president, and he said, "Would you please do this?" I said, "Absolutely not. No."
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, I did. I
Yeah.
was definitive. No, I'm not going to do it. And then he came back to me and he said his wife said that anybody that could put together the stuff that I was putting together would certainly make a good leader, and maybe I should reconsider. And,
Aw.
it was like one of those things you just couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
Not only is Jerry a wonderful person, but so is his wife, Lois. And it was like,
Yeah. Wonderful.
okay,
Oh,
I'll do this, but maybe I won't win.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Susan, I just want to ask you about that, because you said something really interesting there, which was that I was just a band director from Pittsburgh, and it reminded me of a conversation that I had very recently in regards to ACB. I've been talking to a number of international band directors about getting involved and having talks about international involvement. And Lyle McDermott, who might be listening to this podcast, is a band director from Tasmania, and said exactly the same thing. I'm not sure why you'd want my opinion. I'm just a band director from Tasmania doing our own thing in our community. But isn't that exactly what ACB is about? I mean, I think that's what makes ACB so different to many of the other organizations that are out there. It is about those communities, and communities can range from Pittsburgh to Tasmania. And community bands have a lot of similarities across the world, and a lot of differences, and that can be fun too. Have you grown into that idea over the years that being just a band director from Pittsburgh, as you say, is actually what it's all about?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think there is so much that everybody has to offer. So yeah, I do think so. Yeah, and I've been really thankful for the opportunities I've had through ACB, and the people I've met as just a band director, and the associations. It's just like mind-boggling
Yeah,
sometimes.
the
Yeah.
networking is really almost worth the amount it costs to be involved with this organization, which isn't very much. The networking is incredible.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, thank you so much, Susan. It's very fun to hear that side of the story. I've never heard that story actually. We've always been so busy, but I've never heard how. Let's turn it over to our future of ACB. Let's go to Beth and talk with you a little bit about some of these same things. Beth, how did you get involved with ACB and your story a little bit?
Yeah. Well, so when I was in the army, one of my last duty assignments was in Germany, and I'd always played in community bands, even junior high, high school, throughout my college career. Was inspired by John Painter and the North Shore Concert Band. Because he really absolutely strongly believed in community bands, and so I know that was ingrained in me from him too. So when I was in Germany, I lived in a little village outside Heidelberg, and of course it took me about a year to find the local community band. I saw their website. I spoke just enough German to get in trouble. And I saw that they had rehearsals on Thursday nights. I don't know what it is about Thursday nights, but that's seems to be the community band rehearsal night. And it was at the sport hall. And so I took my trumpet and wandered down there. and I could hear the music, but I couldn't find a way in. I was so frustrated. So I went back the next week and there was no music playing. So I looked at their schedule. It wasn't, their website wasn't updated. So I'm like, well, shoot. And then I was out of town. So that's why it took me a year. So finally I went, I took my trumpet again. And I sat outside, so I could see at least two sides of the building. And I finally saw a young lady carrying a French horn with her mother. And so I said, Entschuldigen Sie bitte, wo ist die Probe? Right? Where's the rehearsal? And so I assume my German was not great. She said, "Oh, sprechen Sie English?" I said, "Yes, please." And so there's the mother. The mother said, "Yes, what would you like to?" I said, "I'm a trumpet player." She said, "Well, please come in." And so I said, I was trying to come in. I don't know where your rehearsal is. And she said, "Oh, it's this way." And so you had to go down the stairs, around behind the building, and there was like a secret door entrance just to the band room. So anyway,
Bomb shelter.
yeah, pretty much. And the musicians welcomed me right away. And the director was a saxophone player, Keith, you like that? And the musicians, the band had their own room, rehearsal room, and they of course had a kitchen in the rehearsal room. And so at the break during the first rehearsal, now they rehearsed from 7 to 10, which is
Wow.
pretty long.
Wow.
But they also took a half-hour break, and that's because they would go into their break room in the kitchen and they would have a beer and grab a beer or two.
Yeah.
So the principal trumpet, really nice guy, Klaus, not a great trumpet player, but a super person. He had a mute holder on his stand, which he used as a beer holder. So I thought, hey, this is my kind of people. But anyway, so I came back from the, and what I learned throughout that assignment in Germany too is that every band we came in contact to, whether it's military or civilian, musicians are the same, really the same worldwide. And so I came back to the States just absolutely committed to, making sure that adult musicians in particular had an opportunity to play in a band. I live in a small town, mountain town in Colorado, Breckenridge, which is a resort town. Not a lot of people live here year round, but we have this a small core of people that, are hardy enough to get on a back of a flatbed truck in January to play in a parade.
In
So,
Colorado.
yeah,
Okay.
Colorado. So that's how the band started. And so, I want to be part of, making music here in the community in which I live. So I got involved with ACB. I went to the Liberty Classic Festival that Judy Schellenberger hosts in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And I talked to Judy a little bit. I said, so I have this, bizarre concept. I want to start an adult band camp, in Breckenridge. It's a beautiful resort town. I want to be able to, expose my musicians in my band, like Susan was saying. But we got a small band. We only have 25 people, maybe 30. Depends in the summer, maybe 35. But we can't play, quality literature really. I mean, we can't play hard stuff. You can't do that with that small group. So, and also, adult musicians, when you get out of college, there's really no place to play, right?
Yeah.
Unless it's a community band. So, I wanted to play some real literature. So, anyway, so Judy said, "Yeah, well," and I asked her. I said, "Could I pitch this? If I get things together, you think I could pitch it to the ACB board?" Art Himmelberger was the board president, and I knew him. Art Himmelberger is a former West Point musician. So, and I came to Midwest and I presented it to the board, and I said, "Here's what I'd like to do. You guys are the experts. What do you think?" And so I got some valuable feedback. And then shortly after that, I was approached on, "Hey, why don't you come on the board?" I'm like, "Oh, no." And so I can't remember who exactly talked me into running for the board. May have been Art, might have been Jim Mean, might have been Gerald. I mean, who knows? There are many players that could have done that. So there were great people on the board too. And so Tom Rotundi also joined the board at the same time. And so, and I'm sure Art talked Tom Rotundi into that too, because Art, Tom was former commander of the West Point band, so, and knew Art Himmelberger. So that's how I got on the board. And then Gail talked me into running for president. I said, "No, I don't think I should do that." She said, "Well," excuse me. She said, "Well, we need other people."
Yeah. Right.
So I did.
Absolutely.
So
Right.
Excuse me.
Well, no, that's fine. Well, that's good. The benefits of ACB, the of not just being a band member in regards to an organization such as uh, your own band. Of course, a lot of our bands belong so that they can have the blanket license for the ASCAP and the BMI, which was a wonderful thing that ACB was able to, uh, make a contract with them, and it's made a huge difference. We brought in so many more bands, haven't we, Susan, because of that?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that was set up before. I think I was on the board, but it was had already happened. It was when Gerald was president, I think.
Mhm.
And so that part is certainly a huge benefit. But as I mentioned, one of the big things that I find is the networking, to be able also then to go to our conventions. And I don't know, Susan, how many conventions you've attended. I know you've hosted. I've hosted. Hosting a convention is huge. It's
Mhm.
a 2 or 3 year undertaking, really, and so that's something that ACB does well. And I was just talking with some other people today at another meeting, and they were talking about, tell us they didn't know ACB at all, tell us about it. And as I started to talk about the convention, I started to smile because we haven't had one since
Mm.
2019. And consequently, we've missed a couple of years here. And with our next one being in New Mexico, that's a place we've never been with ACB. So we're so excited about this opportunity.
So tell me about the convention, because I'm one of the four of us on the interview here that actually hasn't been at a convention. I've had the opportunity to learn a lot about them lately, but for any of the people that are listening to the podcast that know the ACB or maybe don't know the ACB but haven't been able to attend an ACB convention, maybe Susan, maybe you can talk us through maybe a little bit about what would people expect to see at a convention, and what sort of opportunities are at these conventions?
There's a number of different like hallmark activities and things that happen. One is the convention band, where everyone who wants to play gets together and plays under a really fine, stellar conductor. And that's a nice mixing. I'm an oboist, so I got to play with all these other oboe players of from different places, and we talk and exchange things, and that happens all throughout. There's I've heard like a grouping of third clarinet players who just want to always play third clarinet so they can get together in the same set, even though they could play other parts. They just want to play together as a group. So there's the convention band and the performance. There's clinics of various sort of different things. Some might pertain to health of musicians. Some might pertain to the business of bands. Others might be about just developing your band or repertoire. They really run the gamut of whatever you can imagine that's important for a band or band members would be a type of clinic. There's speakers, such as a keynote speaker, who might address a certain topic that would be of interest to everyone. Could be something historical, could be something about the Goldman Band or the Sousa Band, special presenters, performances, lots of performances by community bands. And that's always so exciting to me because I like to hear, what are other people playing? How are they doing this? How are they seating their people in the band? What happens to the sound when they put their French horns here instead of their, whatever. So those things are always interesting to me because I play with that, like, okay, this section's strong, so I want them here, and this section's weak, so I want them here.
Yeah.
um, you know yeah, because we play in community bands where it's not, I don't have all the perfect things, so I might listen to the military bands and go, hey, that's cool. Can't do that. How can I make my band sound like that though?
Right. Right.
So that's really great. But the people and the time that you spend networking and just mixing and mingling is huge. And also there's sometimes tours of the local areas, so you get to also talk with people and meet them as you're seeing things.
Gail,
That's
what
right.
what have been some of your favorite clinics that you've been able to attend at different conventions? I've been able to look back at a number of different conventions over the years, and
Right.
there seems to be some amazing talks and clinics. And what I did notice is that for anyone that has been to like maybe Midwest Clinic, but hasn't been to an ACB convention, it's just exactly what Susan said. There's talks about like the history of band or on a
Hmm.
specific, and you don't really get that at like Midwest Clinic or
Right.
TMEA. It's all very music education focused there,
Right.
whereas this just love of band seems to be the highlight of a lot of the conventions, and I think that sets it apart. Gail, is there any standout clinics to you that
Yeah.
you've
I have
attended?
one. It was a very dry clinic in regards to the topic, but it was a very important clinic, and I believe it was in New Jersey, and it was all about copyright laws. And as much as we all go, oh my goodness, it's just so many rules. It was the person that presented it really presented it to people like us who feel the way I just said, and it was one of the best ones I ever attended. I really enjoyed it, even though it was an eye opener to the things I wasn't doing right. But that's okay, and then think
Right,
of all the people in the room that also learn that. One of the other ones that I attended that I really enjoyed were of some of the various composers that are writing for wind bands today. Really have enjoyed those because you get a chance to actually meet this person that all they are is a name up on the right hand side of your music or on your score, and you get the opportunity. I think ACB, in my career of being involved, which has been about 20 years, has done a really good job for me to allow me to meet these kinds of people and find out that they need us as much as we need them. And that's an important thing, that it helps settle a community band down a little bit about these people want to do this for you. It's this is they're about us too. They're not this high and mighty like we were taught as children, maybe in our bands, that they were just some person that might not even be alive anymore, kind of thing. So that was really very cool. And I got to play in a couple convention bands when I was first on the board. I chose to play, and I wholeheartedly agree with you, Susan. That is so much fun to do, and to work with conductors and see the frustration that even these stellar conductors have to deal with when you have a group that it only has 2 or 3 rehearsals and they have to then perform. So those were some of the fun ones out in California at one of the conventions. I was out there. That was a really great time. Those of us who live in different parts of the country who get to go to the other side of the tracks in our country, it's been delightful to be able to travel. That's the other thing too that I think ACB does really well. It's not always at the same location, like the Chicago Midwest is always in Chicago, whereas
right.
we can travel all over and get to go and see what other people do, which is still basically the same thing we all love to do, but get to chance to see like San Francisco or wherever you might go. So those were a couple of the things that I really have enjoyed about it.
Beth, have you had the opportunity to attend many conventions over the years? Is there any standout convention? I know that's probably a little unfair to ask, but is there a standout memory that you have?
I really enjoyed the Pittsburgh convention. Actually, I know
Good answer.
not looking up Susan, but yeah. No, I enjoyed the conductor because I chose to play in the convention band. I've done the played in the convention band I think 3 times, and it's really interesting. A lot of people come to the ACB convention. That's their great opportunity to play in a fully staffed ensemble. So again, that kind of reinforces my band institute idea. So I think people really enjoy that too, and it was fun to, I didn't see people except once a year at the ACB convention, but it's an instant connection. Then, Lorelei Conrad, who I knew when I was in the Army, she was the commander of the Navy band, also in Hampton Roads area, Virginia Beach area, and Larry Lang was the commander of the Air Force band also at the same time. So we were all three together and did joint concerts there in Virginia Beach. So it's really fun to play in a trumpet section with Lorelei and her husband too. I mean, that was a
Yeah,
lot of fun stuff,
right,
So
right.
yeah, so I think the sessions, frankly, for me, kind of all blur together between TMEA and Midwest, and so I can't tell you that I remember specifically any session, except I do remember the clinic Gail talked about with the copyright. I thought that was very informative. So
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
so
Tell me, just to for anyone that is thinking about this convention band and is thinking that it might be something that they'd like to do, what's involved with applying to be part of the convention band and taking part in it? Gail, how would someone go about being part of the convention band?
Well, it's simple. As long as you are an ACB member, or if you want to do it, you can become an ACB member. No, 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 not difficult. You get on the website and you join, first of all, or if you're already a member, then you go to the registration of, which will be, the next one was the New Mexico, Santa Fe. And in fact, my husband and I just did it a couple nights ago. And you just go in and it says registration. And then within the registration, there's a place of playing in the convention band. And you put in what instrument you play. You put in any additional information. For instance, my husband's a percussionist, so he put in the different ones that he feels the strongest. Actually, he's a trumpet player and a piano player, but I've made him be a percussionist in my band, so he's enjoying this. And so he's very strong, obviously, in the keyboard kind of things and the accessories and bass drum and the more technical ones like snare and stuff. He doesn't is not ready to do that, but so he put all that in there. And then if you it depends on who is doing the convention as to how your parts are, like first, second, third part on trumpet or clarinet or whatever. But if you have a real strong, like someone mentioned, a third part, I want to play third clarinet, or I play bass clarinet and I play contrabass, or whatever, they do have to bring their own instruments. That is something that you have to consider if you're flying, that kind of a thing. And then you hit the button and pay for it, and then you will get contacted, and how they're going to distribute the music just depends on how this particular convention's planning on doing that.
Well, if anybody is interested in taking part in that next convention band and looking to future years, all of the links will be in the show notes for this episode, as well as links to anything that we've been speaking about today. And you'll be able to find them all there on your podcaster of choice. I wanted to talk to all three of you a little bit about community band in the US. I come from a country where community band, as I mentioned on the last episode, community band is banned. Unless you're talking about some of the professional military bands or the police bands, all the bands that are in Ireland are community bands. We take in children at 8 years of age, and they can stay in the band until they until the day they die, and that's normally what happens too. I believe that there's a man down in the Boher Boy band in Limerick, Pa Whelan, and he's been in the band since he was 6, and he's 96 now, and he's still going, and he's still playing
Wow.
euphonium. So and he's had his children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, I believe, go through the band too. So that's what community band is here. But Beth, what's generally what is a community band in the US? And what do you believe its function is? Because you have school bands over there predominantly doing the music education part. What's the main function of a community band in the US?
Yeah, Keith, I think your point is great, that we do have music in the schools here in the U.S., and so most school districts have a band, not all. So I think the community bands in general, and Gail and Susan can jump in here. I think community bands in general in the U.S. are adults that have not don't have access to play in a school band anymore, but they enjoyed it, and it provides a sense of really a sense of community. I think one of the things we saw during the pandemic, at least I saw in my little band, was those folks, some of them particularly, need the band more than the band needs them. They're truly
Yeah.
isolated, don't have a sense of community. That is their sense of community by
Right.
playing in the band. And also people within the city, the town, always, they didn't have that outreach either. They didn't feel like they were part of a community. They were isolated. So I think that really has been highlighted during the pandemic here too. So I don't know. This is a small rural town, so it's people drive from 90 miles away one way to get here to rehearsal. In the
Wow.
winter here, it's a pretty frisky drive at night
Yeah.
to go over
I bet.
2 passes to get here. So
If I drove 90 miles, I'd be at the other side of my country. So
I want to say, Beth, just to reiterate what she said, I've had a number of people propose to their significant other in my band over the years that I've been involved, which has been 25 or 30. So it is truly a community within itself. And it is an important place because the people that do what they do they don't find that anywhere else. It's I always tease and say it's their bowling night. It's when they get to go and do what they love to do. The thing that a lot of younger people do today, which is the computer games and the kind of things that we did, that's really, if you break it down, I think about this a lot. You break it down, that's what band is. It's a challenge. It is a community. It allows you to do something creative and something beautiful, and you're doing it together. The word band is exactly that. If you band together to make a product of some sort that's very creative, so it really checks a lot of boxes in a human being's needs. And that's why I think community bands maybe started out of some of these company bands. Originally, I think out of England, it was the Black Dyke Band and things like that. And in America, they kind of started it that way as well in some of our East Coast. That's why most of the bands that are the oldest community bands are all along the East Coast, because of that
Yeah,
reason.
we got some
Yeah,
Midwest bands that are really
yeah,
old.
we're getting pretty old now too in the Midwest. But when you
There
really
seemed to
look
be a
at it,
parallel evolution of community band around the world around that 1860 period. It seemed to be sparking on both sides of the Atlantic at the same time. Here in Ireland, I often joke, for anyone that hasn't heard this, most of the bands in Ireland weren't started by the unions like they would have been in Britain. They were started as temperance bands here
uh,
in Ireland, which I think is so funny because if you see the name of the bands in 1860, for instance, in Ballinasloe was the Ballinasloe Temperance Band. But by 1880, most of the bands had dropped the temperance
yeah,
name altogether.
exactly.
Musicians, putting musicians together
Sure.
in a band hall probably wasn't the best way to try and avoid those sort of band
You know,
sessions.
that that's the way Drum Corps International kind of started too. The American Legions and the those types of places decided to help these kids after the Depression to do things and not become troublemakers in these communities. They started to support them with bugles and drums, and that's
Mm.
the reason these small drum corps started as well. So it's kind of the same concept as the temperance, really, in a lot of ways, Keith.
Are community bands on the way up? With all of these kids coming through middle school and high school band and college band, there seems to be a huge amount of graduates that have had 7, 8 to 10 years of high level music education. Are they heading to their community bands? Are there more community bands growing and prospering? I've noticed, like when I'm seeing the establishment year on a lot of groups, most of them are quite recent. I mean, within the last, not most of them, but a lot of them are like within the last 20 years or so. There's seems to be new bands coming along all the time. Susan, be seeing a growth in this happening?
Oh yeah, I receive emails every week, several from people who want to join the band. We've had to cap it at 80 just for a space reason, and I feel so guilty every time. And I try to send them to one of the other bands in the area and say, I'll put you on the wait list and I'll let you know if you're at a point where you want to do this, but I know you want to get playing. And I see a lot of young people, and it might just be that I'm located near a lot of colleges and graduate schools. So I see the people who have been playing in college and they still want to play. They're really excited by it, and they're good players that come to me. So we have a lot of young people. Babies are a thing for us, and people getting married, and then they have babies, and then only one of them can come at a time. So we're okay. So you can have a trumpet or a tuba. You can't have both because now they have two kids. You have to wait until the kids are old enough,
Yeah,
so that we can get both players back again. But people are doing that. I've heard people say they drop out, but they don't. Not at least not where I am. They just keep going.
yeah.
So they don't want to lose their seat.
Yeah,
So
that was
go
that was
figure.
a big worry, I think, at one time, that when people started to age out, or got to the point, how do you
Mhm.
deal with that? And what are we going to do? It's going to be the end of community bands, but it's not. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Susan, you live in Pittsburgh, a fairly
Mhm.
good sized city. I live in a really small area on the west coast of Michigan, and I agree with you. I get. For each concert, I think since the pandemic has kind of come through, I thought, oh, I'm going to lose people left and right. And during the thick of the pandemic, I had at least 4 or 5 emails from young people who are
I
coming
know.
in. I know, who are coming in from companies, like if you have corporations in the area, these young people come in and they're looking to meet other people that do something that they like to do. And they loved to play in college, their college bands. Most of them are college graduates, not all, but many have played, there's engineers and there's teachers and there's doctors, and they just want to still be in something that they felt really good in somewhere else in their lives. And
Mm.
I agree with you. I've gone from the pandemic hit my band. My band, I have a roster of about 85, and I just did a concert in October, and I had 76 people that wanted to play. A couple of them chose not to for various reasons, but of those, I think I had 13 new people since the pandemic in 20
Wow.
started. So even in the small areas, those kinds of things are happening. And I think it has a lot to do with what your website looks like, what your concerts are like, what the area music stores are saying about your organization. All of that marketing stuff is important that you continue to do, because when they Google it, doo, 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 what pops up?
So I'm gonna not to say that your town, Gail, is not small,
Yours
but
is
we're,
way
yeah,
smaller than mine, Beth.
we're,
I've been to your
yeah,
town. It's
yeah.
that
So
big.
but even like I said, we don't have many full time residents, but we do have a lot of folks that come in to support the ski resort in the winter, particularly, and inevitably every season we have new people that say, hey, I played trumpet. I had a guy that was a lift operator that ran the cats at night, the snow
Huh?
cats at night. He said, hey, I played trumpet, but I didn't bring my trumpet with me because I didn't know there was a band out here. I said, well, lucky for you, happen to have a couple extra trumpets there.
Like
So
17.
yeah, I loaned him one of my trumpets, and he played with us, and then our brass quintet, for instance, was playing at a library event this last summer, and one of the librarians said, I was an all-state euphonium player in Minnesota.
Wow.
I'd love to play,
Wow.
but I don't have an instrument. I said, well, lucky for you, I happen to know the band director. And so we can get you a euphonium. And so we did, and there was a Starbucks young gal, just a manager at Starbucks, that heard the band concert and said, "Wow, I'd love to play." And so we had
Oh.
another euphonium player,
Hmm.
so another euphonium that the band director, kind of high school band director, loaned us. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that kind of thing. So
Beth, I think we're probably similar in that I come from a very rural part. I'm originally from Dublin, but I'm living in a very rural part of Ireland now. And I think one of the things that I've been very excited about through the pandemic, and I want to ask yourself and Gail and Susan this as well, um, the idea of this flexi music. That is being it was always around, but now everyone seems to have embraced it, and many composers and arrangers are talking about embracing it long term now because they've seen the benefit of this for many groups, and I'm sure community bands in particular will really benefit from this because, as Susan said, sometimes it's a choice between that tuba player and trumpet player who can commute in on that day. We need that flexibility in our community bands. Have you used any of this flexi music yet, Beth? Is it something that you think that you will benefit from?
oh well, I don't think flex music. I think the official term flex music has just come into vogue in the
Right.
Hmm.
last couple of years. I mean, all of us, I'm sure, have as conductors have said, okay, I don't have a second oboe, so trumpet. I'm gonna write out a part for you to play. And so, I mean, in the army, I did the same thing. So we all have kind of managed our resources and done flex. Changed the arrangement a bit to accommodate whatever. But yes, I think I think it's got some great potential for particularly smaller bands that don't have all the instrumentation. So yeah, it's exciting that composers are want. I guess we should talk to Jerry Brubaker, former president, and ask him what he feels as an arranger. Does he like arranging stuff for flex instrumentation?
Well, I'm not to take away from you and your arranging skills, but certainly just a reflection on me. I'm glad that the actual arrangers and
Yeah, right.
composers are doing it themselves
Yeah,
now
it's
because
much
I
better.
know I've definitely butchered a few arrangements, and I won't mention any composers' names in case they hear that. But what I think what's really exciting is that some of these scores are being composed from scratch with flex in mind. I think that's really exciting because the idea of adapting something can be quite difficult, but if it's designed that way from the
Yeah,
very beginning, I think that's really exciting. Gail, have your group is quite large and a
Yeah,
fairly good
it is.
balance of instrumentation, but I'm sure that even a group like yours will benefit
Oh
from
yeah.
having the option of using things like this that are
I've
prepared. Yeah.
looked at the Flex with the idea that with the what if, like last winter, thinking to myself, what am I going to do when I can? I'm going to use Flex. I haven't purchased any, but I was very excited because the ACB did it. ACB Connects all about this with the organization that put all these composers together with the idea of how can we help our school bands, how can we help our universities, how can we help our community bands to have music to put together when they do get back. And what has come out of that, of course, is the fact that it's only going to be an amazing benefit to any community that wants to start a band because of that. And a lot of it came out of not just these great composers that chose to do it, but the ones that do it really well, like you said, Keith, are the ones who had to do it, like Beth did, or any of us have had to do over the years. And they found out they were pretty darn good at it. And so they started to then produce more and more and more. And it's only going to be, I think, a whole nother genre of music that people can take and use. I know there were a number of composers that chose to do it off of some of the classics that they had in their own compositions, and they took these beautiful pieces and then took it down, like Joy Revisited, or some of these. I know Kelly was very involved with that, and boy did it ever help. And there were so many people very relieved that they could teach virtually, like we all had to do for the past couple of years, and still have students enjoying very good literature. They didn't have to go back to basic band books kind of thing.
Yeah.
Susan, have you used any of the Flex? I haven't.
Yeah, I have used it, especially when I was starting out with the 20-piece bands that were rotating
Right.
because we could only have so many people in a place. And I appreciated that the music that's Flex now is so much more sophisticated. So I
Yes.
actually did John Mackey's Sheltering Sky and to Kelly's Belle from the Cajun folk songs.
Mhm.
Very nice arrangements. And I did use the Tekeli arrangement with the full band later on to
Oh,
perform. And it was, yeah, it really translated well. I don't need to use that. I feel like I'm ashamed here, but I have pretty full instrumentation. So when I say that, it's the trumpet or the tuba, I've got four tubas
yeah,
and I've got 12 trumpets.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not really dire. It's
Right,
great to have everybody, but I do
right,
have resources. Um, yeah, I think it's smart stuff. I think it's a great thing for smaller bands who want to play good stuff.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I mention all of this because our very next episode, two of the champions of this flex music will be our guests, and we will be having Alex Shapiro and Caitlin Bove as our guests on the very next episode. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that and the impact that it's having on all of our bands. And in the next episode, we'll be able to find out about what the future of that movement is and what we can look forward to with that. Um,
Right.
Let me find out a little bit about all three of our presidents. Uh, Now, from a non-musical background, and this is the section that we're calling off the rostrum, where we find out a little bit about the things that we love, the things that we hate, and the things that we spend our time on when we're not dealing with music, which is, I'm sure, very rare. So I'm going to host most of this time, Gail, so that you have a chance to
Yeah.
answer some of these questions
Aw,
as well
thanks.
this month. And we'll start with, and we're going to ask, these are quick fire questions, and we're going to ask all three of you the same question, and we'll find out a little bit more about everyone before the end of the episode. So, my first question today is, who is your favorite author? And we'll go with fiction authors only on this one. And Susan, we might start with you on this.
Oh no, too fast. Favorite fiction author. Okay, I'll say C.S. Lewis. Some of
Oh,
the, yeah, like it's quasi fiction. Wait a minute. You got me too quickly. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe,
There you
and
go.
some of the space trilogies. Really smart stuff. So,
amazing! I loved the Narnia books.
yep.
Gail, who's your favorite author?
Well, I'll have to tell you, my favorite author right now, and she is a world-known author, has had movies done of her books, is Lynn Austin. And she actually lives just about 30 minutes south of me. She lives in Holland, and her husband is one of my principal trumpet players. And I didn't meet her because of any of that. I met her because I got a book and I liked it, and I got reading the back of it. I'm like, oh my goodness, she lives just south of me here, and I've been on a couple of her book where they do the new book, and so you get to be part of the team that helps launch a book. I've been involved, and so Lynn Austin, she's fantastic. If you really like historical fiction, she does a lot of that. It is somewhat Christian based, but it's not like in your face Christian based. It's just a good people kind of book, and a lot of it is. I would say some of it, the big thing right now is World War II stories, but it does a beautiful job of weaving stories into it. There's a whole thing about this town just south of us called Holland, Michigan. A lot of the people from the Dutch colonies came here and settled here, and she's got three historical that goes through the whole thing, and then they end up here in the town where I can go walk around. So I have to say, Lynn is probably one of my favorite authors, and I just ordered her most latest book. Just ordered it the other day.
Gail, you're always so great at promoting Michigan and promoting the people that you
Yes.
know. We're waving that flag. Beth, who's your favorite author at the moment?
Oh, I think Bob Woodward, but the probably has to be. He's probably he's not a nonfiction writer at the moment. So, fiction writer probably Tom Clancy.
Ah,
And
a very, very, very military answer there, Beth.
I love C.S. Lewis too.
Yeah, for sure. And all the
Well,
Harry Potters.
let's start
Yeah.
with Beth this time then. Beth, what was your first job, non-music or music?
First job,
Very first job.
was detasseling corn in Iowa.
That's a good job.
I was 13, and I could make $1,000 in the summer. Of course,
Wow.
you had to get up at 4:30, be in the field by 5. It was too hot by 10, so you worked from 5 to 10ish. And then I was too short to really get to the top of the tassels to pull them off, so I had to learn to bend the corn stalk and pull it off that way. Then you went
Wow.
back out in the field about 5:30 in the evening. So it was hard work. It was awful work. I'm allergic to corn pollen, and those corn fronds like rip up your skin.
Yeah.
So,
Did you
but
walk along and do that, or were you
yeah,
on a
yeah.
device?
No,
Okay.
you walked. That was it. You walked for that. There was no device. There was, and the other before the test on corn, you got to walk beans, which was pulling the weeds out of the soybean rows. Also, backbreaking. Hard, hot. But for $500, you're a kid. That's
Yeah. A lot of money.
awesome.
That is a great and I imagine a very unique answer.
Very.
Not so unique if you're from Iowa.
Promoting
Gail,
your state.
That's it.
What was your first job, Gail?
My first job, my mother got for me, I think, to get me out of the house, probably. I think she had to sign for it because we didn't even have Social Security cards in those days. Remember, you got them when you started your first job back in those days, not when you were born. And I was a hotel maid. I grew up in a little tiny town that was very much tourism. And so I cleaned rooms. I remember practicing my double tonguing while I was singing a song, while I was making beds and cleaning things. And I remember one time I walked into this bathroom to clean it, and the bathtub was full of mushrooms. The morel mushrooms are huge in the
Oh,
fall here to collect them and to eat. They're delicious types of mushrooms. And this bathtub was full of those kinds of mushrooms, stuff like that. But I will tell you, I think it was something. I worked my way up. I found out that I did have those leadership skills. As I got a little older, they asked me to leave that position and go into working at the desk. And I was a person that did the phones, when you had the plug in phones. That got me 2 more jobs as I went on, knowing how to do a switchboard. And I worked in college doing the desk because at a dorm, because I had been a person in a hotel that had worked the desk when people came in. So it was one of those things that allowed me to do a lot more things because of it. So I really can make a good bed, let me tell you that, and I keep things clean.
Susan, what about you?
My first job, I didn't fill out a Social Security, IRA thing, but I was 3 years old and I started singing for banquets and going around to different things. And I just, of course, had it all memorized. My mom would play piano, and I think I was like a novelty, a little 3-year-old who could sing a whole repertoire. So I still have a good memory.
Oh, that's
But the
Mozart.
first really paid, I mean, these were paid gigs. But anyway, actually receive a paycheck regularly was as a summer camp counselor. So, and I did that for a
Lovely.
number of years and loved that. Did rough camping, out there with raccoons and all kinds of. You wouldn't know it to see me now, but
No.
yes, I did. I could build a fire and cook on it for a batch of kids.
Such different and diverse answers from all three. That's fantastic. Let's see if we can get some more different answers. Gail, we're going to start with you this time.
Uh-oh.
Um, uh, what is your favorite holiday?
Ooh.
As we record this 2 days
Yes.
before Thanksgiving.
Yes,
Yeah.
Uh,
absolutely.
Not
I
Thanksgiving
really,
here in Ireland, so I will be
yeah,
working.
I really think my favorite holiday is Christmas. Christmas is just a time of family, and it's a time of music you only usually hear at Christmas time, and it's a time of changing your house around to make it festive, and a time of um, doing things for other people, and giving gifts and finding ways to make people happy, and doing a lot of music. As a child, played a lot of music, Christmas singing in church, and playing cantatas and growing up in northern Michigan, which is really very cold. The weather gets very much colder than it does here. I'm a trombone player and playing in a brass group outside. And I remember going to my band director's house to play in this quintet that we had playing Christmas songs, and my slide froze. So he said, "Come here, come here, come here." He said, "Don't tell your dad." And he poured a whole bunch of vodka or something on my slide, so that it would move because it was just solid, frozen, things like that. But my favorite holiday, I really have to say, I think, except for when there's been times sad things in my life, Christmas has been difficult. But
Mhm.
in general, I really do love Christmas. It's a wonderful time.
Susan, what about you?
Easter.
Easter.
Easter is my favorite time. Rebirth, spring. The music's pretty good too, especially if you're not a brass player, because brass players have all those like fanfare things that go on nonstop. But if you're conducting it, who cares, right?
Suck it up.
So yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, Easter definitely.
What about you, Beth?
Actually, I think Thanksgiving.
Oh.
It's yeah. Well, I think all the other holidays involves a lot of music.
Hmm.
In fact, so I'm always working.
Yeah.
Or have always worked during those holidays and Thanksgiving. Yeah, I don't really have to do anything except be with family, eat some turkey, watch some football, and sleep. So
Sounds like a
That's a
good
great
one.
answer. Yeah, it was. I mean, I did the. I was 12 years in the military myself, and a lot of the holidays you just have you
yeah,
have a job. You're working. You're traveling somewhere, and it can be difficult. St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day, obviously big big
right.
holiday here, of course.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have had a St. Patrick's Day off since I was 7.
Right.
Oh my. So what's your
It's
favorite, Keith? I got to ask you.
I mean, am I biased if I do say St. Patrick's Day? I do love it. I mean, because
Yeah.
obviously it's Irish, but also it's about bands for us. We don't have like a Thanksgiving parade, or we don't really do a New Year's parade or anything like that. But on St. Patrick's Day, there is a parade in every corner and every village in the country,
Wow.
and that goes from Dublin and Cork and Galway, the big cities, down to small little villages like Ballinasloe and Clara. We do a grand marshal at the beginning of a parade. I'm not sure if that's the same in the States, where you have someone that's nominated to be the grand marshal of the parade.
Hmm.
And in Dublin, that could be someone like a famous poet or a famous actor, that's Colin Meaney or someone like that. That's famous and Irish. But in some of the small little towns, I remember leading a parade with the army band, and the grand marshal was a goose that was dyed
Right.
green because they had won a goose competition.
Keith, I think
So
you might get kicked out of Ireland if
Yeah.
you didn't say St. Patrick's Day, by the
Yes,
way.
right. We don't want that.
yeah, so I think St. Patrick's Day is probably my favorite actually. Christmas would come very very close to that, but
Mhm.
I do a lot of my career surrounds St. Patrick's Day, bringing groups to Ireland and bringing Irish groups to America, which is very popular for St. Patrick's Day as well. So yeah, probably St. Patrick's Day. Um, very final question before we finish up. Do you collect anything? And I think we'll start with Beth on that. Do you collect anything? Have you got a collection of anything, either formally or informally, stamps, or do you just or do you collect scores?
I certainly collect scores. I started to collect Starbucks or coffee mugs when I was traveling around the country, and then traveled to Europe. So I have, a couple. Like I drove through Paris with some friends, and we have to go to the Starbucks on the east side, and the Paris traffic was awful, but we got the Starbucks cup. That was a thing, and Moscow, I had to find the Starbucks in Moscow, that kind of thing. Silly things like that.
Mhm.
Shot glasses too, and trumpets. I seem to collect. Got a second. I just got a second slide trumpet, which is means it's doubly worthless because now we have two slide trumpets. I've only played slide trumpet professionally twice in my life, so I don't think I really need two slide trumpets. But so my husband will have a slide trumpet. I'll have one, and our other trumpet player in the band will have a third one. So we're gonna have to come up with some kind of slide trumpet feature. I don't know what that's gonna be, but
Well, it sounds like you hand out as many trumpets as you do collect them from your conversation earlier on. I also collect Starbucks cups, but they're the paper ones and they're usually at the back of my car. Gail, how about you? Do you collect anything?
Well, over the years, there's been many things, but the one thing that I think that it's almost like our family's thing is we love to go places and find sea glass or lake glass. So I have collected a lot of that over the years, and that in various kinds of rocks. Anytime we're anywhere near water, our heads are down and we're looking for things. So I guess I would say that that brings me great joy. It's a quiet time. You're just not thinking about anything other than looking for that something in the water kind of thing. So I have a lot of it, and it's beautiful. It's just such a pretty thing. I like to even just put my hands in it and like a sandbox almost and feel it. It's just earthy to me for some reason. So I think sea glass would be my answer.
How about you, Susan?
Mine's kind of similar. It's seashells, and it's
Ah.
not like I find them, they find me.
yeah.
I even walk along the beach and say, I'm not picking up any more seashells. And then they're just right there in front of me. They're like beautiful gifts from the sea that you just have to pick up and you just have to take them on. So we have way too many of them here. So if anybody needs some seashells, I will be happy to share.
Yep. Yep.
Links in the show notes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, really. Just send a note. You need a
Pay
well,
postage.
a conch, or a king's crown kind of thing. I've got them all.
Yep.
These are the opportunities that come when you network among the ACB, of course.
The black market of ACB.
So just before we finish up, I just wanted to give Beth and Susan the opportunity just to let us know how we can find out more about them and their bands. And then Gail, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how we can find out more about the ACB and where people can find the podcast and find out more about that. So Beth, can you tell me a little bit about how to find out about you and your groups and your bands?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a website. We're going to start a adult jazz band institute too. So we're doing a concert band institute, which is June coming up, right? June 15th and 19th for 2022, and then the next week we'll do a jazz band institute Wednesday through Sunday also, and that's musicatthesummit.com. Then that has bios, my bio, and all our staff bios, and it's hosted by the Summit Concert Band, which is our small but powerful little band here in Breckenridge.
Fantastic. And people are in Pittsburgh or want to find out more about a great Pittsburgh band. Susan, how can they find
Well,
about you and your band?
My band's name is East Winds Symphonic Band. We're on the eastern suburbs of Pittsburgh, and so it's ewsb.org. And you'll find everything there, including a link to our next concert live stream and history and whatever you need to know about the band. And if you want to contact me, conductor@ewsb.org.
Thanks, Susan. And Gail, how can people find out about the Association of Concert Bands? All of these fantastic conventions, these
Hmm.
networking opportunities, all of these amazing connects, ACB connects, and our podcast now as well.
Right.
Where can they go to?
Well, it's very simple. It's AC and then the word bands. So it's ACBANDS .org. And it's very easy to find. And and everything is on the website. It really is. We do have an Instagram account. We have a Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Instagram. I think I already said that. And all of those, the kinds of things we're doing. And so we're hoping that no matter what you like to connect with, that you would get the opportunity to kind of check us out and see what we are. Very important to us that you find us, and you're always welcome to uh, connect with me through the website. If you would just like to talk to me about something, I'm happy to do that. I'm a big networker, so that's important, and we'd love to have you involved. I want to say before my time is up here, I want to say how truly grateful and thankful I am to all of you, especially the fact that I have Beth and Susan as mentors. Just because one of us is past, present, and future, all phenomenal careers, and to be involved with people like you two ladies. And I just want to make note that there's a great deal of sass happening at the president's meetings because of three really powerful and people, women who really want to see this go into the 21st century, this organization. So I am very proud to be part of this group, and I just very grateful. Thanksgiving is only around the corner, and I just wanted to say how thankful I am for that. And Keith, to you for helping make this happen for the podcast. I really appreciate that as well. So
Well, I
thank you.
have truly found the spirit of Christmas and the spirit of the Association of Concert Bands. This is the end of the Christmas Carol, and God bless us, everyone. I just want to make mention of someone that we can all see here on the screen, but that has been quietly working in the background, doing a huge amount of work for us, hosting and organizing our guests and organizing a lot of this podcast in the background as well. Mary Kate, our marketing director, she's doing a huge amount of work. So Mary Kate, thank you very much, and to everyone that's involved with the communications and marketing side of the ACB, from Nancy to Sarah and everyone that's doing a huge amount of work there as well. So thank you to everyone that's making this, that's making these communications and these productions possible. You can find out a little bit about me at globalbandroom.com and the various the various podcasts that I host there, including one that I co-host as well with Gail called Repertoire Happy Hour,
Hmm.
which we'll be re-establishing again in January, and looking forward to that. We'll be at Midwest Clinic, and I hope to see you all there. Make sure that you come over and see myself or Gail or Beth or Susan, depending on what time that you're there at. So happy Thanksgiving. If you're listening to this recording, Thanksgiving is well past past us now, but happy Christmas and a happy New Year to you as well.